Hello! In the last video, we talked about points, lines, and planes, the basic building blocks of geometry. Now today, we're going to talk about using those building blocks to create one of the most important ideas in all of geometry, the angle. An angle is formed when two rays share a common endpoint, like so. Remember from the last lesson that a ray is a type of line that starts at one point and extends forever in another direction. That common endpoint is called the vertex of the angle. And the two rays are called the sides of the angle. So whenever you see two lines or rays meeting at a point, you're looking at an angle, which is the space in between. Angles are everywhere in life. The corner of a room, the hands of a clock, the way a door opens, all of these create angles. Geometry just gives us a precise way to describe and measure them in the real world. There are a few ways to name an angle. You can name it using just a vertex, like, for example, if you had an angle with the letter A here, you can call this angle A. You can also name it using 3 points with the vertex in the middle. For example, if we add 2 more points on this angle, say for example B and C, we can call this angle either angle BAC or angle CAB. It just has to go in order from points on the sides of the angle through the middle of the vertex of the angle. So the order actually really matters because the middle letter will always tell you where the vertex of the angle is. Note that if we were to do it like this, then you have to add a small little slanted L in front of each of the names to indicate that you're naming an angle, like so. Now let's talk about how we measure angles. Angles are measured in degrees, which is written with a small circle symbol. For example, 60 degrees. A full rotation around a point is 360 degrees. That means if you spin all the way around once, around a point, like so, you have turned through 360 degrees. From that, we can get some important benchmark angles. A straight line forms a straight angle, which is exactly 180 degrees. And if an angle is exactly 180 degrees, well, it's called, like as previously mentioned, a straight angle. So to summarize, acute angles are less than 90 degrees, right is exactly 90 degrees, obtuse angles are between 90 and 180 degrees, and a straight angle is exactly 180 degrees. Now let's talk about how we actually measure angles. The tool we use is called a protractor. A protractor is a semicircle marked with numbers from 0 to 180 degrees, as shown on the screen. To measure an angle, you place the center of the protractor on the vertex of the angle. Line up one side of the angle with the 0 line, and then read the number where the other side crosses the scale. One important thing to remember is that most protractors have 2 sets of numbers. You always start counting from the side where the 0 is lined up. If you start from the wrong side, you'll get the wrong answer. Another important idea is that angles can be combined and compared. If 2 angles share a side and the vertex, they are called adjacent angles. For example, this angle and this angle can be called adjacent as they share the same vertex and a common side, this side. So think of adjacent angles as sitting next to each other and not overlapping. When 2 angles form a straight line, their measures add up to 180 degrees. These are called supplementary angles. For example, something like this. These 2 angles are both formed with the same line. And so the sum of this entire angle will be 180 degrees, making these 2 angles, this one and this one, supplementary. This is one of the most important relationships in geometry and will come up constantly later in the course. We also sometimes talk about angle notation. When we write the measure of an angle, we use the symbol M followed by the angle name. For example, if you have an angle such as this, with using the previous rules described above, the vertex labeled A, and this angle has a measure of 45 degrees, then we can write this angle as the measure of angle A is equal to 45 degrees to denote that the measure of angle A is 45 degrees. So before we finish, let's review the main ideas. An angle is formed by two rays with a common endpoint called a vertex. Angles are measured in degrees. A full rotation around an angle is 360 degrees. A right angle is always 90 degrees. Acute angles are less than 90 degrees. Obtuse angles are between 90 and 180 degrees. And straight angles are exactly 180 degrees. We use a tool called a protractor to measure angles by lining up the vertex and starting from 0. Adjacent angles share a side, and angles that form a straight line always add up to 180 degrees and are called supplementary. These ideas are the foundation for almost everything else in geometry. In the next lesson, we'll start looking at angle relationships in more detail, including complementary angles, vertical angles, and what happens when parallel lines are crossed by a transversal. That's where geometry really starts to feel like solving puzzles. But make sure you do the practice problems linked down in the description below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.